Neema Moraveji worked with me last year. We taught a class. What did the name of the class end up being a year ago?
Designing Calming Habits.
Designing Calming Habits. Neema continues to impress me and inspire me, and I'm such a huge fan. So Neema is finishing up his doctoral work here at Stanford. He has launched the Calming Technology Lab here, which is breaking new ground and doing amazing stuff. Neema's working with Mobile Comments to do an experience right now with all of us. Tell us what it's about. Go, Neema.
Thanks, PJ. I'm going to take a cue from Alex. My goal today is to blow your mind, okay? So this room is filled with people that are going to dictate the future of health. So no pressure, okay? Big responsibility here. Let's take a poll. So raise your hand if you consider yourself someone who's generally pretty healthy. Cool, okay, well that's good. Now raise your hand if you consider yourself someone who's kind of often has a lot of stress, kind of experiences stress pretty often. It's okay, don't be bashful, okay? We don't like to talk about that. So it's kind of interesting how we can consider ourselves to be very healthy and also consider ourselves to have a lot of stress, because we tend to separate mind and body very naturally, these days. So now imagine if you were that stressed, but you didn't have all the environmental factors, the genetic factors, all the luck that you had. Would you be as physically healthy as you are now, right? You may have a different experience of life. Okay, so now I'm going to try a little exercise with you. Everyone close your eyes. Put down your stuff. Put down your technology. Put down everything. It's just you and your breath. Go ahead and close your eyes. Okay. Take a deep, slow breath. What if everybody in the world is already healthy? What if health isn't a place to get to, but something to remember? What stops us from remembering this? I would put forward it's stress and anxiety. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. So don't you feel refreshed, right? Now, what if a mobile health experience could create that state change for you? Now, the power of technology, that it's very scalable. So what if it could create that experience, that state change for you, and then also it would scale it out, and it would be throughout your day. It would be right before you're making an eating decision. It would be right before you're ordering food or about to take a drink or smoke, right? That's what technology does. It's pervasive. And that's really what we're here to do. How would that state change transform engagement with your users? Engagement with the health behaviors you want them to have? How would it transform their lives? Well, I'm here to tell you that you are soon going to have to address stress in some shape or form with your service. Whether that's at the beginning to initial engagement with your service or to sustain engagement with your service, it's going to come up. It comes up in your lives. Why wouldn't you think it comes up in their lives? Whoever they is. So luckily, I'm going to show you how to do it. So that's pretty exciting. So we're going to experiment live at the conference on this very topic. We're going to launch a service, and we're going to experiment with what worked and what didn't work, so you're going to be able to get your hands dirty, okay? So my name is Neema. Launch the slides. And I run the Calming Technology Lab here at Stanford, where we invent and study ways of designing calm into the lives of all kinds of people, from children to seniors. I'm also running research and development for BeLife, which is trying to bring some of these things to the world. So here's an example of one of our research projects, Breathware, where your phone monitors your breathing and triggers you to change it when you start to get stressed. Get a notification here. I'm wearing it right now. You then look at it, and you can be either in the green, in the yellow, or in the red. It's kind of looking at the past 10 minutes. It's giving you points, and we use this as a behavior change platform for stress. You take a photo about what you're doing, and later it will tell you, how stressed you were during these different activities. I teach a class called Designing Calm. This is an example of one of my students work, it's called look forward to. It's a savoring service. Look forward to things, social endeavors with other people. This is an example of a very tiny machine that BJ mentioned. Make me smile. It's like, I just want to get something that gets people smiling, and then I want to amplify it. Nothing makes people smile like funny pet pictures. And babies, of course. So she took those two things, turned them into a tiny machine, and then designed around it. Here's an example from Andrew, who's here at the conference. After you step out of a lecture, you got all this stuff to remember. Hey, what are 5 words that summarize this lecture for you? Get it out in 5 words, and you're done. You don't have to carry that all in your head. So we teach this class. I teach with Steph Habib, who's also here. And it's called Designing Calm. It's at the D School where we think and invent this. And, underlying all the healthy behaviors that we want people to engage in, eating, exercise, and so on, there's this $1 billion question. And that's their state. They're being before they're doing. And this is kind of like, oh my God, how would we do that when we're already just trying to get them to do exercise? It's not that this isn't before. This is with. Being and doing happen together always. So you're already designing being into your services. You're just unconscious about it. So now it's time to bring consciousness to it and bring intention to it. So when we talk about state, this is kind of negative, positive, low intensity, high intensity. You have things like being scared, being bored, being relaxed, being really excited. We often vacillate between those two. But there's this whole calm state that's in the middle. That's where rest happens. That's where healing happens. That's where the body can do the work it needs to do. If it never goes there, it will never do that. You have to wait until you sleep. But you have all day to try and go through these different states, making sure that you enter that one. Normally, we end up kind of getting as aroused as we can, and we think that's going to improve our performance. But actually, there's a sweet spot in the middle. And you don't want to stay in that sweet spot forever. You kind of need to traverse that as well. So, I want you to ask yourselves, how does stress preclude your users from engaging in your interventions and behaviors? What does your service do about it? Does it create more stress for them? Because if it does, it will not last. Think about it in your life. If you're using a service and it's creating more stress for you, are you going to use it even if it's the best thing in the world? No. You start to drop off. So if it's not initial engagement, it may be about sustaining that engagement with the service. So how do you create calm with baby steps using a mobile health service? Well, the mantra to remember, one of the things to walk away from the talk with, is address the stress. It's really easy. Okay? That's just a mantra to remember. Every time you're designing something, service, you have to acknowledge there is stress that you're bringing to the world potentially, and you need to acknowledge it. You need to take care of it. So step 1 that we've tried to create a small little step-by-step algorithm for this. Create a model of calm for your user. What that means is you acknowledge the stress they're experiencing in their life. You acknowledge what calming mechanisms that you're bringing to them. This is all online, so I'm not going to go through this in detail. And then you acknowledge the context of the user. So that gives you a lay of the land around how this user is experiencing the technology and their current state and what their context is. You take that information, that information is available at bit.ly/model of calm. You use our design cards. We've established a set of design cards that you can take and say, okay, there's a behavior I want to create. Let me take a design card and see how am I not just creating stress, but actually reducing stress for people as part of this. So you would just take one of these design cards and apply it, and you can try different ones out. Try what works. And you can mix and match. It's eating, creating a commitment. Exercise, humanize the interaction. These are all available online as well. Then you're going to apply, you actually make a design, and you apply a heuristic to your design. So we've created 10 heuristics. Again, I'm not going to go through them in detail. They are published. And you will go through and say, okay, through each of my screens or interactions, just apply all the heuristics. And you'll basically be kind of stress-proofing your service. And that's what we wanted to create. So now, live on stage, we're going to launch a very simple example that I cooked up with Mike at Mobile Commons, okay? Everyone take out your phone. Okay, so we wanted you guys to experience a mobile health behavior service that we kind of cooked up just to get a common level playing field around like common experiences that we can talk about. Text calm, just the word calm, to 877-877. And then you will be in the system and you will get a response and you'll start. We'll be talking about the results tomorrow afternoon. So you'll be, okay, sorry, yeah. So it's 877-877. And just text the word calm to it. And your first step is going to be right there waiting for you. It's going to take about 15 seconds or so. So don't expect it immediately. I'm hearing some dings, so there's responses coming back. And then I'll just leave it there. And then we'll be talking about the results tomorrow. So it's a little bit of a cliffhanger, and we'll talk about the design and how we did the design tomorrow afternoon. Okay?
Neema, follow up. Tell us what happened.
All right. So you guys you all have a common experience, right? You were in this conference, and you all experienced this service, right? The mobile commons. And so we can get our hands dirty and like talk about what worked and what didn't work. One thing I want you to understand as we start looking at that is that everything you touch has a remnant of you in it, right? Like a footstep. Like when you look at someone's footsteps, you can see, oh, this is where they ran and this is where they did things. And you can look at your own footsteps. So when you're creating a service, when you're creating a product, whatever state you're in, whatever attitude you have and belief you have, it's going to be embedded in that service. So you don't always have to be focusing on, solving the problem only. You can look and say, well, what assumptions am I making? Look at the product and see where am I at when I'm making that product. So keep that in mind as we look at this. What I was going to take you through is this idea of like optimistic usage analysis. So we're not going to take that kind of, okay, what didn't work? We're going to try and find what worked, find the tiny machine that worked, and talk about that. Okay? So one success, we actually launched something, right? We got it out into the world. So we should, realize that and acknowledge that. We changed the way people were breathing. It's pretty significant. We failed sometimes, right? That's great. Celebrate failure. Luckily, we failed fast, which is exactly what we wanted to do. We learned, which is fine. But more importantly than learning is we actually wrote down what we learned, and we wrote it down simply, which I tried to do in this little decks, okay? So this is like a little mini process that we can go through. It's like writing it down simply, what worked. So here's an example of what you guys experienced, okay? So, it asks you how many breaths you took, you responded, and then it asked, well, how did it make you feel? I wanted to thank Mike from Mobile Commons for working with me on this. So first of all, it's asking two questions. That was the first thing. There's like, it's an assumption we made that we could ask two questions instead of one here, okay? We got a 67% response on that first one. So you remember, you guys, 96% of you opted into the service. So that was like really huge. We had time to have you do that. After you did the first deep breathing exercise, 67% of you responded. And then for that second prompt, of the 67%, 77% of you did the second prompt. Okay? So it was like, not everybody responded, and then the second one was like, of those people, we had about 3/4 do the second response to that. Now, later in the day, it was dinner time, if you guys remember that, we asked you, we had you do some more breathing and asked you how you did. We only had 44% of the people do the one, respond after the second breathing like that around dinner time. But of those people who responded, they did 50% more deep breaths. So it's a little interesting machine starting to perhaps form. And that of those people who responded, 82% responded to the second one. So what I started to notice is like there's this little kind of thing where some people are kind of down for this game. And some people were a little bit, perhaps they're not down, they're distracted, they got a lot of stuff going on. But the people who were interested were quite interested. So we had 96% opt-in. And one of the take-home messages for me was work with what's working. It's easy for me to focus on what wasn't working, and those are important too, but it's harder often to celebrate those successes. We weren't just giving information, we were giving very specific triggers to people. Oops, that's weird. And, okay, I've got a blue screen. So, but that's okay, because one of the things that we realized, if you remember participating, was that we had you do a baby step, and then we kind of layered them, right? We had you do one baby step, and then added another one to it, and then added another one. And we kind of did this layer cake approach. And that was one approach to baby steps that I feel like didn't really work, because in the end, you weren't no longer doing a baby step, you were doing this whole cake thing. And a lot of people weren't into that. So rather, taking a baby step approach to doing baby steps and learning baby steps, learning to implement them, where take something that's working and just focus on, don't get greedy to add a lot of more things to it, but rather cultivate that and see if we can have that happen in a consistent manner. The second big takeaway was those people who were engaged with the system went above and beyond what we asked them to do. We said take at least one deep breath. People were taking 3, 4 by the end, right? So big gains in what people were willing to do. So I think that was pretty interesting in terms of the takeaways from how we could then think about how to bring those back to our services that we're designing. Focus on, create the lens of like not what's failing, but what's working, and then amplify that machine, right? That tiny machine that BJ was alluding to, and get it humming. Okay, so that's what we got, and happy to bring BJ back on. Thank you. Yeah.